Hi, welcome to Harmony with Su-Lynn. In this tutorial, we'll look at rigging the mouth. We'll look at reordering the art layers and using a different art layer to invert cut the teeth and the tongue with the mouth. We'll also look at using deformers on drawing substitutions to give options for mouth shapes. So let's start. The assets you'll need will be teeth. So you need to put that on a different drawing, and a tongue and the mouth. Now for the mouth, we're just going to have a look at that on its own. So I'm just going to solo key it. So with the mouth, it's going to be slightly different in terms of how you add color. What you'll need to do is to draw the mouth shape, and that can be the first drawing substitution. And once you've got that drawing, we need to make, traditionally or conventionally, we would make color art from line art and use this function here. If you wanted to change your destination layer, you can hold down Shift and select on this tool. You can change the destination layer to underlay and then hit OK. When you do that, just make sure that if you're on your drawing tab, that you remember to go to underlay to be able to see the stroke and to then add the color. So for the teeth and the tongue, you would add color in the normal way, which would be to put color in the color art layer. So the line art in the line art and the color in the color art. And the same thing for the teeth. The line art in the line art and the color in the color art layer. Only the mouth would have line art in the line art layer, but color would be put in the underlay art layer. If you don't do that, then this system of rigging for the mouth won't work. Once you have your assets, you can add the pegs. So you can select all and add multiple pegs. And then you need to add the rotation point. So the rotation point, remember to select all and then move the rotation point for one of the pieces. I've chosen the tongue. And then when you go through to the other two pieces, the teeth and the mouth, the rotation point is actually quite close by. Now, what we know about the mouth is that the mouth has, if we select that and go to the drawing tab, the line art is in that line art layer and the color has been put in the underlay layer. So what we need is a node for the underlay. So we're just going to look for that in the node library and then just put the first two letters. So the underlay layer, we need to attach that from under the connector, from under the mouth to the underlay art layer. Now what we want to do is to cut the tongue and the teeth with the mouth, just using the color in the underlay art layer. So let's add a cutter to the tongue and we can cut that. And immediately when we make that connection to the port on the cutter, we can see something's happened. It's not quite right yet. So what we need to do is invert that by double clicking. And there we have now the tongue. If we use the transform tool, just to check that, is now being cut by the color that's been placed in the underlay layer. And we can reset that. So we need to repeat that for the teeth. So again, let's go ahead and add the cutter. And we can drag another connector from under the node for the underlay layer and connect that to that cutter for the teeth. And again, we need to invert that. So you can double click or you can just open up the properties and then check that. So we just need to do one more thing. So as we can see, the line around the mouth is inconsistent. So let's go ahead and get a line art node and then connect that from under the mouth. And then we need to drag the connector and put it above the teeth. And now we have a consistent line all the way around the mouth. Let's add drawing substitutions to the mouth. And I've already covered this in a previous tutorial for drawing substitutions with the eye. We first select on the mouth drawing node and then go to the timeline. I've already made a couple of drawing substitutions, so I'm going to go to frame 7 on my timeline and add a new empty drawing. I then can put onion skin on, and then going to the drawing panel, I can now see the previous mouth shape and add a new one. And it's also helpful right now just to have the library open so you can see your drawing substitution panel and you can see you're on, for me it will be on frame 7, but for you maybe it will be on frame 2. And now just go ahead and draw in a new mouth shape. With my new mouth shape, which could be an open clenched teeth shape, I will now add my color. And just to remember for the mouth, because we've already rigged it using the underlay layer to cut the tongue and the teeth, we need to remember to change the destination for the color. So we can do that by holding Shift and then selecting the option to make, usually it's color art from line art, but if we hold down Shift, we can change the destination layer to underlay. Just remember to change that back to color art for any other process that you'll continue with, and then you can go to OK. When I use that function now, I can then select the under art layer. To show the stroke, just hit K, and now I can drop in the color for my mouth. As soon as I do that, because I have made the rig, we can already see the teeth and the tongue are also cut within the color for that mouth, which is in the underlay layer. So here's one I made earlier. And if we just use the bracket keys, square bracket keys, you can see all the different mouth shapes that I have made. And what you'll see as well is that because the drawing substitutions have already been rigged, they follow along as well with the rig that we put together. So that's great. Let's see how we can extend some of those mouth shapes and create further options by adding a deformer. Let's first of all go to our open mouth shape here. And what we can do now is just to select on the peg, go to our deformer tool, open up our tool properties and just make sure envelope deformer is selected. Once that is selected, we can go ahead and add the deformer. So it's just a click and drag action. Make sure that it reflects the shape, but doesn't have to be completely following the line of the drawing. Once you're happy with that, and just to make sure that your handles for the Bezier are not too long, we can check that is working. So there we go. We can now have more options, and obviously we can move the teeth and the tongue that's been cut by the mouth to reflect whatever shape that we've made. What we have done is to add a deformer for the first drawing substitution, which doesn't fit the second substitution drawing. So how can we add a new deformation chain? So we can do that by selecting the mouth and then making sure with the mouth selected that we go to create new deformation chain. We can also rename it so that it makes sense. So first of all, I have put in a deformation chain for my first substitution drawing. So it's an open smile mouth. When you're creating drawing substitutions for lip sync, it tends to be at the basic level open and closed mouth shapes. The rest of it can be the U shapes, the O shapes, the R shapes, or the Th shapes. It's also advisable to name your deformation chains so that they make sense to you. So for this one, I may call it open cry mouth, and then I can go to OK. With my deformation tool selected, I can go ahead and add a new deformation for this mouth shape. So once you've added the deformer for the second substitution drawing, it probably will be easier for you just to hide the deformer before you go to the next one, which is the O shape for me. So again, I'm going to go through that. So with the mouse selected, I can create a new deformation chain and I can name it. So for this one, I'm going to call it an O shape. And again, the deformer selected, I'm just going to go ahead and put in that deformer. Once you've added all your deformers for the different drawing substitutions, you can then test this out, selecting the drawing node for the mouth and then just hitting square brackets just to scroll through them. And as you can see, each deformer chain matches the mouth shape.